How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 1.
Hello, America. Welcome. It's Eric Erickson here. The phone number, 877-973-7425. We're going to treat today like an open line Friday because I've been summoned to a super secret meeting of the vast right-wing conspiracy tomorrow. You know, when I was younger and started doing this sort of stuff, they would send us to boring places. At least I get to go to Las Vegas. I got a lot of work to do, but I'll have some fun. So I'll be in meetings tomorrow. Now, there's a programming for. Did y'all see what happened at the Diamondbacks game? Realize we're not a sports show, but it's actually kind of interesting. There's a massive swarm of bees. And they actually, a beekeeper went out there, took care of business. They honored him. Well, this actually happened a while back at a Braves game. I was supposed to go to that game and wasn't there. And this massive swarm of bees shows up. Well, that was the original beekeeper to solve the problem. His name is Brian Grant. He actually is a friend of mine who reached out and said, hey, just wanted to remind you of that. So I asked Brian if he could come on to the second hour and talk about what do you do when a swarm of bees show up at a baseball game, because it happened, first time it happened was at a Braves game, and it was Brian who dealt with it and did not have protective bee gear, I might add, and waded into the swarm of bees. So we'll get there, but we must begin here. I want to go back to yesterday, to something that happened, because we're seeing a pattern here. A drip, 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 drip. It's important for you to understand the pattern. This is yesterday at the White House press briefing.
I understand that President Biden historically has spoken very forcefully about anti-Semitism. But this week, he's not. He's MIA. Is he that worried about losing the youth vote with these protesters?
I'm going to be mindful. You're talking about youth vote. You're talking about 2024. No.
Young people.
I have to say what I have to say, and just give me a second. So I'm not going to speak about somebody's doorbell. Is that a doorbell?
Alarm.
An alarm. Okay. All right. And I'll speak more broadly. I can't speak to youth and support and voters. That's not something I can do from here. The president has taken a lot of policy actions here that he knows that young people care about.
That young people care. Okay. So first, Peter Doocy says, where is the president? He hasn't spoken. And then in Waukesha, Wisconsin last night, Donald Trump calls out Joe Biden. Calls him out. Where is he on this? Donald Trump denounces it. You know, Joe Biden, literally the first two words when he announced this campaign, Charlottesville, Virginia. He called out Donald Trump on that. He denounced white supremacy and white nationalism. He said we're a better country than that. He says it's the whole reason he ran for president was Charlottesville, Virginia. And for 2 weeks now, he's been absolutely staggeringly quiet. So Donald Trump calls him out. Peter Doocy in the press briefing does. CNN takes note that they only are issuing statements. So finally today, the president of the United States finally addressed the nation.
Moments about what's going on our college campuses here. We've all seen the images, and they put to the test two fundamental American principles. Excuse me. The first is the right to free speech and for people to peacefully assemble and make their voices heard. The second is the rule of law. Both must be upheld. We are not an authoritarian nation where we silence people or squash dissent. The American people are heard, In fact, peaceful protest is in the best tradition of how Americans respond to consequential issues. But, neither are we a lawless country. We're a civil society, and order must prevail. Throughout our history, we've often faced moments like this because we are a big, diverse, free-thinking, and freedom-loving nation. In moments like this, there are always those who rush in to score political points. But this isn't a moment for politics.
So rushing to score political points. Hint, Donald Trump for the audacity of calling him out for remaining silent. And then, of course, he pivots.
Right. There's the right to protest, but not the right to cause chaos. People have the right to get an education, the right to get a degree, the right to walk across the campus safely without fear of being attacked. But let's be clear about this as well. There should be no place on any campus, no place in America for anti-Semitism or threats of violence against Jewish students. There is no place for hate speech or violence of any kind, whether it's anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, or discrimination against Arab Americans or Palestinian Americans. It's simply wrong. There's no place for racism in America. It's all wrong. It's un-American.
Okay. Why does he have to caveat anti-Semitism and bind it to Arab American discrimination and Islamophobia? Where is the Islamophobia happening on these college campuses, please? Can someone direct me to the campus where people are taking over buildings and encamping, trespassing on grounds because of Islamophobia? Where exactly is that happening? Where are people discriminating right now, blocking access to Arab Americans? Where is that happening? I'm unaware of those events happening. So why does Joe Biden keep bringing those up every time he talks about anti-Semitism? He can't talk about hatred of Jews without saying, oh, and also of Arabs.
I understand people have strong feelings and deep convictions. In America, we respect the right and protect the right for them to express that. But it doesn't mean anything goes. It needs to be done without violence, without destruction, without hate, and within the law. You know, make no mistake, as president, I will always defend free speech, and I will always be just as strong in standing up for the rule of law. That's my responsibility to you, the American people, and my obligation to the Constitution.
Okay. Listen. I'm glad Joe Biden came out and denounced what's happening on these college campuses. It's clearly becoming a political liability. The problem here is it's not leadership. He had to be bullied to do this. And this is a recurring pattern with Joe Biden. Joe Biden doesn't come out and speak until sufficiently bullied. Joe Biden does not change his mind until sufficiently bullied. People understand that if they bully and cajole Joe Biden, he will react to it. That's not leadership. That's being led around by the nose by other people. And that's what's happening here. For 2 weeks, people have pointed out, myself included, that his office has sent out pre-printed statements written by someone else denouncing what's happening on college campuses. Only after Donald Trump calls him out does Joe Biden choose to respond. Only after Peter Doocy causes a sensation of the White House press briefing about Joe Biden, his reviews come out, does Joe Biden come out? It shouldn't take people bullying Joe Biden for Joe Biden to do the right thing. And yet this is consistent with his record over 50 years. And particularly being in the White House, Joe Biden doesn't act. Joe Biden reacts. Joe Biden doesn't lead. He is led. People want a strong American leader right now to deal with the economic situation, to deal with what's happening abroad, to deal with terrorism, to deal with anti-Semitism. And Joe Biden's not that guy. It's why views on Donald Trump's tenure in office have gone up with so many people who didn't like him, but now they're like, you know what? He wasn't that bad. We may have been worried about him mean tweeting, but he's not on Twitter anymore. And although, by the way, the economy was pretty good. Jobs were great. The economy, not bad. We didn't have all this international chaos when Trump was president. Russia was not invading Ukraine. Joe Biden's not a leader. It should be obvious. You may not want Donald Trump as your leader, but at least he leads. Joe Biden has to be bullied to do the right thing. And that's the thing here. It's one thing for Joe Biden to be bullied, to make a mistake because he was bullied. That's not it at all. Joe Biden was bullied into just speaking up against anti-Semitism, and Joe Biden can't bring himself to just denounce anti-Semitism. There is not a single college campus in this United States right now where Arab Americans and Palestinians are fearful of their ability to access campus. But there are a whole hell of a lot of campuses where Jews are not welcome right now. Then the president can't just call out the anti-Semitism. He's fine calling out the white nationalism. There are no caveats when Joe Biden calls out white nationalism. There are no caveats when Joe Biden calls out racism. Every single time there are caveats when Joe Biden calls out anti-Semitism. Why is that? Why can Joe Biden not just come out and say hating Jews is bad? It's always hating Jews is bad, and also hating Arabs are bad. And by the way, he spit more words denouncing discrimination and hatred of Arabs than of Jews. That's right. He called out anti-Semitism and then spent many more words calling out Islamophobia and discrimination against Arab Americans and Palestinian Americans. Way more words in his speech about Islamophobia than anti-Semitism at a time there's not a single campus on this country where Islamophobia is an issue. He's not leading. He's being led around by progressive activists who are anti-Semites, who hate Jews, who do not like this country, who want to call for a revolution. He's on the side of the progressive revolutionaries. That's not leadership. Frankly, for some reason, it's anarchy. He's on the side of these anarchists who just want to tear things down. I'm glad he spoke. I'm glad he finally spoke up against what's happening on these college campuses. I cannot emphasize enough, though, that he spent more words in his speech denouncing Islamophobia and discrimination against Arabs and Palestinians than he did against anti-Semitism. And we're only dealing with anti-Semitism at these college protests. We're not dealing with hatred and hostility of Arabs. So the only reason he did it was because the man who started his speech saying this isn't a time for political cheap shots is engaged in political cheap shots in order to hold a base of people who are mad at him helping Israel. The hypocrisy on it is absolutely astounding. I don't understand this White House. I think they are engaged in political malpractice. They are reactive. They're not proactive. They are defensive. They're not on offense. They have convinced themselves that they hate Donald Trump so much, that everybody hates Donald Trump so much, that everybody they know hates Donald Trump so much. There's just no way that Donald Trump can win. That's exactly how Donald Trump is going to win. It's exactly how Donald Trump is going to win. Because the Democrats underestimate him time and time again. Heck, I did in 2016. I really didn't think Trump could win in 2016. And he did. Defied all expectations. I learned the lesson. The Democrats haven't. They're just so convinced that everyone in their bubble hates Donald Trump so much he can't win, so it doesn't matter what Joe Biden does. But it matters a lot that the president of the United States can't come out and denounce anti-Semitism plainly and boldly. And it matters a lot that the president of the United States can't do it until bullied, because the president is supposed to be the leader of the free world, not the let about of the free world. But that's what Joe Biden's become. Dementia is a sad thing to witness. Well, the Louisiana Senate Finance Committee has just passed a bill to fund students instead of school systems. It was a 4-3 vote. The House of Representatives in Louisiana passed universal school choice 72-32. It looks like the Senate in Louisiana is going to pass it. Governor Landry says he'll sign into law. Louisiana will be the 12th state to pass universal school choice. Good for them, expanding a program started by Bobby Jindal. Let's go to the phones. Larry, you're going to be up first today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Eric. With redistricting, I ended up in Marjorie Taylor Greene's district. I'm going to try to make this brief because there's a couple of quick issues. One, I was in communication with her about issues I'm having with my VA benefit, and all they're doing is taking and forwarding it to the VA and coming back, not really wanting to know what the issue is. I had open heart surgery the first of the year. A couple weeks later, I had to take an ambulance ride that my military health insurance refused. They don't want to hear about that. But the big kicker is you go to her website, you go to any congressman's website and go to Contact Us. Once you get past the Are You in My District screen, they give you an option of tell us what you want with a blank piece of paper, except Marjorie Taylor Greene. She does not want to hear from her constituents. It's, do you want a flag? Do you want to meet with me? Do you want me to speak to your constituents? Oh, you want to tell me what you want, think? Here's a pre-made survey.
Yeah, you listen.
I told her, I hope and pray somebody runs against her in 2 years on the Republican ticket.
Hey, listen, I gotta tell you, her constituent service isn't great. I hear from businessmen in that area all the time. This, for those of you outside of Georgia, there's a lot of big businesses in that district, and I hear from them all the time that they got to go to Barry Loudermilk as the neighboring congressman, or Drew Ferguson. They got to go to one of those guys to get attention. That her district, just constituent service. She's great at TV and exposure. She's just not good at actually helping the people of the district. But I mean, the grassroots love her there because she gets on TV and gets people fired up. So she keeps getting reelected. At some point, constituent services come back to bite you, though, if you're not good at that. And her office really, just objectively, you all know I'm not a fan, but I can be objective enough and tell you that the number of business people I know from the district who complain about it, that's a big red flag, and I hope her office gets under control because, I mean, even a left-wing member of Congress who I don't like should have good constituent services because you're there to do the job of the people, not just get on TV. And that's gotta change. All right. The phone number, 877-973-7425. We're going to treat today as an open line Friday since I got to be in a meeting tomorrow. When we come back, though, we got to talk about Donald Trump. He's on the campaign trail. I got some great audio from the president last night in Wisconsin to play for you. First, I got to tell you, I had packages delivered today that I sent through Stamps.com, and I never had to go stand in line to ship them. They came to me. They picked them up. I had to buy my own digital scale because they didn't send me the free one, but they'll send you a free one if you go to Stamps.com, click on the microphone, and put in Eric, E-R-I-C-K. Now, here's the cool part about it is some of these packages, they did not need to rush it, and so I could just say, find the cheapest option to ship. But a couple of them, I wanted to make sure they were overnighted, so I clicked the fastest option. And I got to pick, and then I saved up to 89% on UPS and post office rates. Some went by the post office, some went by UPS. It was all great. You can do this with Stamps.com. All you do, go to Stamps.com, click on the microphone, put in my name, Eric, E-R-I-C-K. You don't have a long-term contract to sign. You don't have any long-term commitment. You can cancel at any time. They'll still send you the free digital scale. They'll send you some postage. You can even order your shipping supplies directly from Stamps.com. You just need a mobile device or a computer and a printer to print the labels, and off you go. They make it really easy. It's very intuitive. It's Stamps.com. Click the microphone, put in my name, Eric, E-R-I-C-K. You can get shipping and saving today. Hello there. It's Eric Erickson here across the nation. The phone number 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, it is an open line Friday on Thursday since I am headed out of town tonight. I got meetings tomorrow that I can't get out of. Good meetings. So, and you know, I don't mind pulling back the curtain a little bit on this because I'm not talking out of turn. This happened last year. Same thing this year is Republican donors get together, and occasionally I've been asked just to come talk to them. They don't pay me to do it. I pay my own way, but they just want my candidate advice on how to allocate money. And they canceled the meeting because Trump became the nominee very earlier, frankly, than some of them anticipated, which I told them was going to happen anyway. But what about the Senate? What about the House? Where to apply money, what to do? A lot of these billionaires, they get scammed by people, and finally some of their guys are like, why don't we get together a group of kind of responsible voices of conservatism to try to help them, particularly those who have campaign background, which I do. So I just go kind of like tell them the bad ideas that many of them look, because man, billionaires, they come up with some stupid ideas. Really remarkable. They think because they made $1 billion doing one thing or another that suddenly they're geniuses at everything. And no, I assure you, you're not. Now, I want to talk about Donald Trump. The meltdown has continued over Donald Trump's Time magazine profile. People have taken the bait on this. It's not a bad interview, frankly, if you bother to read it. But what I find just so notable about the entire situation are the number of people who on the left have such uncontrollable rage about Donald Trump. They just miss the point and play into his hand on the stuff he's saying. So he went to Wisconsin, and he's playing up right now in particular how bad the economy is, and also Biden's plan to bring a bunch of Palestinians into the country and leave a bunch of illegal immigrants in the country, something that even a majority of Democrats now are opposed to. Here's Trump on the campaign trail. This was a really good line of his last night. This one.
Biden has run the government like Robin Hood, essentially in reverse, stealing from the poor and giving it to the rich. That's actually what he does. You know, they talk the game, oh, Trump, Trump, Trump. It's the opposite. It's the opposite.
Now, that line was a great line, but it was on a teleprompter. He stared at the teleprompter, but then it goes off script, and this is why his events are so entertaining, the way he then hops off script. And you know all of his advisors are like, oh, my gosh, what's he about to say? And there's this.
In towns, we're going to stop it cold. We will immediately end all sanctuary and deadly sanctuary cities. I will shift massive portions of federal law enforcement to immigration enforcement, and we will impose a naval blockade on the cartels, because when we clean up the land, they come in by sea, and they have plenty of money to do it. We will put the cartels out of business. They will be out of business, and quickly. And on day one, we will begin the largest domestic deportation operation in American history.
Again, I think it's important you guys hear him say that, because it's 45% of Democrats now favor mass deportation of the illegal immigrants. 45% of Democrats. Immigration is the number one issue in this country right now across the board. 45% of Democrats favoring mass deportation. Joe Biden doesn't have an answer for it. He wants to bring in Palestinians now. He's on the wrong side of so many issues. This one in particular, he's on the wrong side of it. Biden is. Trump really knows where the pulse of American people is. Whether you like him or not, he's a brilliant marketer. He knows what people think about stuff. And he's hitting all of these points today. And yesterday, that was in Freeland, Michigan. He did a couple of events. One more clip from Trump.
But we're going to immediately seal the border. We're going to stop the invasion. We're going to send Joe Biden's illegal aliens back home where they belong. We're going to send them back home where they belong.
That was, he did two events, Michigan and Wisconsin, places that Joe Biden has regularly visited. And Donald Trump's doing well in the polling there. A couple of points here that need to be made before I get to phone calls. One, Donald Trump has been tied up in court. You're not hearing him as much. You're not seeing him as much, except for when he walks out of the courtroom, he makes a brief statement. The media covers that sensationally. That's actually helping Donald Trump. Majority of Americans now, 57% of Americans, believe Donald Trump's the victim of lawfare. They believe the Democrats are using the judicial system to try to beat him because they can't beat him. Number two, when Donald Trump gets out there and has these rallies, he has rallies where he goes off script and he talks without signs of dementia. Joe Biden can't do that. The White House has tried to keep Biden as guarded as possible. He literally has to be bullied by people like Donald Trump to come out and make public statements about things he shouldn't have to be bullied about. You should not have to bully the President of the United States of America to denounce anti-Semitism, but Joe Biden has to be bullied into denouncing anti-Semitism. 3. When Donald Trump does these rallies, what his team is doing, you can tell, is they're getting him to focus on the big issue. He's got to manage his time because he doesn't want to get worn out. He's got to be in court. So when he hits the campaign trail, whether it's the one in Michigan or whether it's the one in Wisconsin, it's largely the same issues he's talking about. And right now, that issue is immigration. It's the issue that defined his campaign. It's the one that put him on the map. It's the one that allowed people to gravitate towards him. And he's focused on the big issue, the issue most Americans care about. And when he pivots from that issue, he pivots to the economy, the second biggest issue Americans care about. Joe Biden is out cobbling together small coalitions of anti-Semites, transgenders, and other. Donald Trump is out assembling a coalition of the middle class and the working class to put him in office. That's a bigger coalition if those people turn out and vote. Trump is engaged right now. God help me for saying it, because the moment I say it, it's going to go off the rails. But dare I say he's doing disciplined campaigning? There's a little bit of an irony here on a famously undisciplined campaigner. Because his time is limited in the amount of rallies he can do, because of his court schedule, Trump has to make the most of every second on the campaign stage. Joe Biden doesn't have to do that. So Trump has become a more efficient, disciplined campaigner, and it's helped him. It is the punchline to all of these trials that in engaged like this and pursued like this, Donald Trump is coming out ahead because it's forced him to have to focus. It's forced him to have to focus on the big issues, to not ramble. It's forced him to focus on what matters to people, not what matters to him. And that's resonating with people. He's ahead in the polling. I mentioned the Ross Douthat piece yesterday that Trump is winning. Whether the Biden team wants to admit it or not, all the signs point to Donald Trump is ahead right now. Doesn't mean he's going to stay ahead. As I've said, incumbency and money and the fact that the people most likely to vote like Biden, not Trump, that all gives Joe Biden an advantage. But if the middle class and the working class, if they turn out, if the undecided voters turn out, that gives Trump an advantage and Trump can win. And the Democrats who are convinced he can't, they have created the conditions by which he wins. By hounding him in court, by tying him up in courtrooms, they forced him to be an efficient, disciplined campaigner, to focus on the messages that work, not the ones that he gets rambling off script. That's improved his game. That's improved his polling. The Democrats have been a godsend to Donald Trump's ability to campaign. Now, let's get to the phones. Bob, you're going to be the next caller. Welcome to the show.
Good afternoon, Eric. I always appreciate and like hearing your topics.
Thank you.
I was listening to what you were saying earlier about the Palestinians, and I find it kind of ironic that if anybody in the United States or a Western country speaks against them, it's Islamic phobia, when in reality that is not. We object to the radicalization that they've had, wanting to destroy Western civilization. And you can look right at their own area, and you see with Jordan, Egypt, other Middle Eastern countries, they won't accept them, not because they're Palestinians, but because they're all radicals.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. It's the fact that they can't be honest about it because they need their votes is one of the most shameful things right now. The Biden administration is coddling anti-Semites, literally coddling anti-Semites. I keep saying the word literally. I got to get that out of my vocabulary. But he literally is coddling anti-Semites because he needs their votes. And good for Donald Trump, by the way, calling him out on this stuff, forcing his hand on stuff. All right, Lance, I want to take your phone call before I go to break. Welcome.
Yeah, I just wanted to say if the college students are going to protest anything, I think they should take a look at what's going on in Ukraine, and that's the most chaotic thing that I've even seen, and it's not going to be much that if that could boil over into the Third World War, and all these folks that are young, they don't realize that they're all of draft age. And if they want to protest something, you know, they dropped an Iskander missile right on top of a bicycle. It's actually a bicycle trail and complex there in Odessa, and they specifically used cluster munition, which is an abhorrent violation to use any type of artillery or cluster munition against civilians.
The problem, though, Lance, is look, you're right on this, but the problem is that other than the Ukrainian president, there aren't a lot of Jews involved, so they're not interested. And, this is something, I forget who pointed it out. I actually think it was John Fetterman, of all people, who pointed this out, that you're not seeing these college kids protest the genocide in Sudan. You're not seeing them protest the war in Ukraine. You're not seeing them protest anything except for the things the Jews are really involved with, and they're on the side opposite the Jews. They're not, no one's talking about or protesting the war in Syria. None of this stuff happening. It's just, it's very notable. They only get worked up when Jews are involved, and they only get worked up when Jews are involved, predictably on the side opposite the Jews. It is mass array of anti-Semitism on display. Everybody needs to take note of that. Now, I need to tell you about Hillsdale College's Imprimis before I get out of here. I did go back and check because I've kept so many copies of Imprimis over the years, and I've got them for so long, I've lost early copies, but it was law school when I started getting Imprimis. And the reason is because I wanted to connect with the pulse of the conservative movement at the time, and Hillsdale College has been publishing Imprimis, that long, I guess now. Wow, I'm getting old. Imprimis is a free publication from Hillsdale College. You get it in your mailbox. You go to Eric, E-R-I-C-K, ericforhillsdale.com. You put in your information. You start receiving in the mail. You will never pay a penny. I've never paid a penny for Imprimis. It's part of their education mission. You go to ericforhillsdale.com. You sign up for Imprimis. You start getting it in your mailbox. Now, what is it? Well, it is a journal. It's not a big newsletter, but it's just deeply packed with conservative thought and insight. It really gets you thinking. It covers the debates within conservatism. It covers the values of conservatism. It has the thinking and the writings of so many of the leaders of the conservative movement. It's a great way to stay on top of the intellectual traditions of conservatism. ericforhillsdale.com, E-R-I-C-K, ericforhillsdale.com. Y'all, it's completely free, and it helps you begin a relationship with Hillsdale College. I've gotten this since I was in law school. I've never paid a penny. You won't either. Eric, E-R-I-C-K, ericforhillsdale.com. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number, 877-973-7425. Y'all, I got to share with you something. My wife and I went to this event this morning at our kids' school. Well, you know what? First, let me tell you that I got to remind you this hour is brought to you by First Liberty Building and Loan. The Frost family, they would appreciate this, given where their heart is. If you're buying building, you need $250,000 or more, reach out to them, firstlibertyga.com. Tell them I sent you, firstlibertyga.com. So go to this event. This has been going on now for a number of years, and it's called a blanket ceremony. So women, moms whose kids go to our kids' school, and the moms who do this are cross grades, they knit blankets for the seniors, all the seniors. Every single senior gets this massive blanket. And so, there's that scripture verse that God knit you together in your mother's womb. So the blankets are knitted because of that verse. And they give the kids these blankets, and they talk to them about the blankets, that none of the women who knit the blankets are professional knitters. And so every single patch tends to have a flaw, and the moms are encouraged to leave the flaws, to leave the mistake, because they want the kids, as they're holding the blankets, to find the mistakes and just remember that the blankets aren't perfect, and neither are the kids holding the blankets, and that no one expects them to be perfect, just that they're loved, and that the blanket's there to wrap them in the prayers of the people who have given them the blankets. It was very sweet to do that for each of these kids. We've been really, really blessed with this school that our kids go to. Everybody really cares, and I'm sure, boy, graduation's getting close, and we may have a gully washer on the show at some point. But I will just tell you, when our kids enrolled at that school, our daughter was going into 7th grade, and my wife felt the need to go to the headmaster and the principal and tell them that they had to commit to watch over our kids because my wife was not going to be around. And she had 2 years to live, and that was 7 years ago. And so she got to be there for this. She, being one of the parents, with a graduating kid. She didn't contribute knitting squares. She was capable, but it's not the moms of the graduates typically who make the blankets. And it was really sweet. And then they presented binders where different people, family, relatives, strangers, people from the school community all contributed prayers for the kids, so the kids can go through the binder and read the prayers submitted by the family, friends, and the strangers who just happen to know them. It was all very touching. I still can't believe I'm old enough to have a kid graduate in high school. How does this happen? Going to college. My baby's going to college in August, and my son is beside himself, like he doesn't know what to do with his sister going to college. Now, she stayed in the same town, but we're throwing her out. We're making her live in the dorm. But my goodness, how am I old enough to have a kid going to college? I got no idea. Okay, we got to move on to other stuff. I'm happy to take your phone calls. I'm going to save all the campus protest stuff until the third hour because I actually want to read you, and I'm going to wait till the very end of the hour to do this. I want to read you an excerpt from my book. I didn't intend for my book to be as timely as it is, but there's an entire section on what we're seeing on college campuses with these protests. And it's in my book, the book written before the protest started. I promise I had nothing to do with the protests, but I'm going to save that for the end of the show. When we come back, though, if y'all didn't see this scene the other night of the Diamondbacks game, I happen to know the owners of the Diamondbacks, and they had this massive swarm of bees that took over, and there happened to be a beekeeper who came and take care of the bees. Well, the first time this happened live on television was an Atlanta Braves game a few years ago. And a guy who happened to keep bees without any of the beekeeper garments, he grabbed a box from a concession stand, ran to the field, explained he needed to get on the field. He was a beekeeper. He could solve the problem because they were on the verge of canceling the game. Found the queen bee, put the queen bee in the box, and saved the Braves game. And he happens to be a friend of mine. So this thing happened. I mean, this has been national sensations. ABC, CBS, NBC, they've all been covering the Diamondbacks game. It's like, this happened to the Braves. So how do you solve it? And why is someone crazy enough to walk into a swarm of bees? I'm going to talk to Brian about it when we come back.